Okay, we're gonna open the, January 2nd, 2025 Planning and Zoning meeting at 4 o'clock. I guess the first thing on the agenda for today is approval of the meeting minutes from November 7th. God, it's been so long ago.
Yeah.
I looked at them, I didn't see any glaring mistakes. Anybody
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
have a motion to approve in a second? All in favor, raise your hand. And then we are to appoint a chair and vice chair for 2025. Do I have anyone want to make any recommendations?
Would any of y'all out there like to replace Seegerman?
The
Anybody?
pay's really good.
You wanna start with chairman?
You can. We can
I nominate Mike Seegerman.
have a nomination for me for chair.
I'll second if we need a second.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Right, now we need a vice chair. I would like to make a recommendation for David Lipscomb to continue as the vice chair.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. All right. So we will move into the public hearing phase. I'm sure there's not any interest in this. This should go pretty quickly. Do you want to, take us into this, Drew?
Just 1 second, catching up over here. Sorry about that. We've got a new agenda system that we're
You go so quick.
working out the bugs on, so.
Well,
We've got an ordinance to annex into the City of Kerrville's incorporated city limits with a zoning classification of R2, medium-density residential, 263.28 acres of land. I'm gonna go the Cliff Notes version on all the deed work here. In Kerr County, property IDs 16315, 16316, 16317, 16323, and 17441. So there is no current zoning because it is outside the city limits. Here's the future land use map, which shows part of it is part of the catalyst area in this part of town, and the rest is zone, or not zone, but left as ag and outdoor tourism, which if you remember on the future land use plan, that ag designation was a placeholder for some of these larger properties, so that as they came into the city, we could certainly look at what would the appropriate uses be for that area. We are proposing R2. Oh, sorry, there's the strategic catalyst area 10. Allowable place types, rural living, estate living, professional services, and then ag and outdoor tourism. We are proposing R2, and here's their initial concept plan, just showing the layout of potential blocks. They certainly have not gotten into the engineering with the drainage and topography, but showing the collector coming out to 173. See on the top side of the page, they are showing the principal arterial, which is on the thoroughfare plan to connect Highway 16 to 173. So they'll be responsible for a portion of that. The adjacent zoning, go back to that real quick. The park is zoned public and institutional, and Comanche Trace is zoned planned development for that golf course community there. Sorry? Let me finish the presentation first. Again, this is their conceptual layout. This is not a preliminary plat, so that it will come back to the Planning Commission at a later date. They have not completed any water, wastewater studies at this time. TxDOT will require a traffic analysis because they are accessing the TxDOT road. So all of that will come at a later date through their future development process. Today we are just talking about the annexation and the zoning. Since it does have access to the primary arterial, there is no significant traffic impact anticipated. The highway was built for this level of traffic, and if TxDOT sees a need to expand it, they'll build that into their plans at a future date. Any parking would be required to meet zoning regulations like any other neighborhood. And staff recommends approval for the case as it is consistent with comprehensive plan and our zoning policies. Pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
Can you put back the conceptual plan, Drew? So what we're looking at there is lots?
Yes.
What is the, along the Comanche Trace common boundary, where you see the lots are set back off the boundary, what is the distance? What is the setback from the Comanche Trace boundary to the lots? Do you
I
know?
don't have any exact dimensions. Again, this was just conceptual layout that they provided. The standard building setback for R2 would be 25 feet from the property line.
I was in communication with.
Sir, wait till we open the
Yeah,
public
wait, we'll
hearing.
get the public hearing, Al.
I was gonna ask a question about that.
Is this from the developer, or is this you
No,
showing us?
this is from the developer.
So, at the moment, this is their plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Do we know how many lots that is?
I don't. Somewhere between 900 and 1,000 lots.
Is there somebody here from,
Yes. If you have any other questions for me, if not, we can turn it over to the applicant and they can give their presentation as well.
you wanna do that before the
Yeah.
public hearing?
Let's go ahead and do that.
Okay.
Martin, if you could pull up the other presentation.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Ashley Fairmont. I work with a law firm called Killing Griffin and Fairmont. I'm here today on behalf of D.R. Horton, who would be the builder and developer of this project. We have a brief presentation, but as Drew mentioned, this is kind of the first step in the development process. So not all of the studies have been completed, but we wanted to provide you all with a concept plan so you can have an idea of how the site would be laid out. So it is 263 acres. So it's a pretty big piece of property. I'm going to kind of skip through here. To the zoning piece. So with the annexation, obviously, comes the zoning piece and why we're asking for the R2. So R2 zoning does allow for 45-foot wide lots. And what D.R. Horton would like to do here is a 45-foot wide lot. The R1 takes you to a 50-foot wide lot. And all of the lots will be over 5,000 square feet. So, and that's the R1 standard. But with the R2 and the 45-foot lot, the market tends to be to have the bigger backyard as opposed to the wider lot. So with the 45-foot wide lot, you can have a bigger backyard instead of the wider piece. And so that's why we're asking for the R2. Everything is proposed to be single family. I know the R2 does allow for duplexes, does allow for townhomes, but that is not part of this plan. It is all single family. The intent here is for D.R. Horton to build, we'll say, for younger families, starter homes, but new homes to service people in the community or who want to live here or move here. Yes, sir.
Just not to interrupt you, do you have conceptually the size of the homes that they want to build? I've got the lots, but do you have the size of the homes that they're looking at?
It was 1,500 to 2,500 square feet.
1,500 to 2,500?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And so here was the concept plan that was put together. Again, there still needs to be quite a bit of studying, and it will come back to you all, obviously, in preliminary plat and platting process. But this is, and just so everyone knows, I know Drew mentioned, this is conceptual, but it is proposed right now. What you're looking at is 1,200-ish lots or so, but it's a 10-year build-out. So it's a long project that will take some time to build, some time to go through the engineering process in particularly. A few comments on traffic. So I know that there are questions, concerns, probably from the community about traffic. It will go through the traffic study process. What is being proposed is is the primary arterial to build part of that connection here that would run from 173 to 16. That on the city's major thoroughfare plan was shown next to the park, so we're proposing to shift it down and take on the burden of building part of that road, which would serve as an access to the community, and then there would be another access point onto 173 as well. With that traffic study, we don't know, obviously, the results of that yet, but do anticipate that there will be turn lanes required on the highway or the main road. Drainage, that's something that is still being studied as well. But just to mention, this is proposed open space that would accommodate some kind of detention pond, more than likely. And width-wise, I don't have that exact measurement, but probably about 200 feet.
The drainage where the blank area is, you talking about 200 feet to the property, to the back lot line of the home?
Yes,
you're gonna
sir.
build?
So
Okay.
I can do it on here. So this area here.
I'm assuming during the due diligence, DR knows that that's a pretty natural drainage area down there, and there are underground springs there that, when it rains, and that it highly impacts the people that live on Dry Hollow and Mulligan Way and LaCumbria there in Comanche Trace, because there's a substantial amount of standing water down there. I'm assuming that they will deal with that, to not
Yes.
create any further water onto Comanche Trace.
That's correct. So I have to comply with city code requirements, which doesn't allow for the impact, the increase in the impact of the drainage runoff. And so the other concern I think we heard is, what's going to happen on the river frontage. This does have a little bit of river frontage. And so that's just proposed to be community amenities. It's not proposed to be subdivided for any residential lots, but just as an amenity for people who live in the community. What that looks like yet, not exactly sure.
Like a park?
Like a park, or maybe some kind of community center, but not homes. And so with that, I think, I'm happy to answer any questions. We don't have, again, this is, the conceptual plan. We don't have much more detail at this point. But, happy to answer questions now or after public comment.
So are we looking at, I see the thoroughfare for your portion of thoroughfare. Are we looking at 2 exits out of this project onto 173?
Yes. So one right now is here, which would be the main entrance to the community. And then this would be the new thoroughfare, which
Do you
would
know
also
the
serve.
distance between those two? That's
Ooh, I don't. Could eyeball it?
500 feet or?
At least, if this is about 200 plus, 500 to 600. We do have to meet the text dot spacing requirements.
What is the reference to connecting 173 and 16?
That's
So-
2050 thoroughfare plan.
It's on the city's thoroughfare
Yeah.
plan.
And,
That's a wish and a promise.
well, originally it was going to be done along the park side and go through Keeble's property. And then when that property was theoretically being ready to develop, then it got shifted over to where whoever purchased the Meek property would be responsible for half of it. I'm assuming that's still the case, Drew, and the other half would be whoever develops or purchases or does the Keeble property. Is that still correct?
That's correct. Yeah, so the thoroughfare plan identifies the connections. We want a connection from 173 to 16. The connection point at 16 has already been determined because the city does have right-of-way for a portion of that. And then as it comes through this property, recommended that it split the property between these 2 developments so that it wasn't taken, the burden wasn't on one development.
So
Has anybody agreed to that?
I mean, they agreed to this portion, the
I
next development.
understand they do, yeah.
Right. And whoever develops Keeble's property, it is required on the thoroughfare plan.
I don't think they have a choice if they develop, but the question is
Right.
if DR begins this process and puts in their portion of the connector, does that trigger having it completed by the Keeble, or is it till?
Yeah, it'd be up to that development. So if you can kind of picture this connection looking like Holsworth Drive, so you'd have 2 lanes on either side with a median. They would build one half of that, and if it is 10, 15 years down the road before anything develops adjacent to it, that 2-lane could still serve as a two-way drive until that time.
I think it's part of what they have to do if they develop.
Have you ever, did y'all ever, thank you for being here,
Sure.
talk about any other zoning, just with,
We looked at the R1, and
well,
Oh, sorry.
2 things that I'm interested in. Let me go
Sure.
through all that. One is the acreage on the river. If, in fact, it's gonna be a park, let's call it whatever the zoning is for just a park.
Or a clubhouse.
As long as it allows for a clubhouse amenity, if that's, you know, what they choose to do, we'd be happy to zone that piece something different.
What does it need to be, Drew, for,
R1 or R2. So since they've requested R2 and we're advertised and published for R2, the planning commission could make a recommendation to R1 as a lower zoning designation.
still allowing for a clubhouse or
And
a
it would-
park?
Yes, it would still allow for the amenity center.
That's one thing. The other, I can't point, you can't see what my finger's pointing at, so I'll come over here, excuse me. Have you ever given any thought to this
When do we get to the public hearing, Al?
being R1, and then this is R2?
I mean, we can look at it. I think the idea, like I mentioned earlier, was to have still the 5,000 square foot lots, but to have them at the 45 feet wide. So I think for today, I think we're still would like to do R2 for the whole property.
I mean, personally, if you have that 200-foot setback and you're not doing any townhomes or duplexes or anything like that, I think it would probably
Well,
be.
but if you rezone to R2 without anything other than a concept.
Exactly, I agree
It
100%.
could be all duplexes.
I agree 100%.
And you know, the size of the lot is one thing, the density of the population is something entirely different. And that's what you can't control.
Let's go through the public hearing and then ask some questions once we have everybody's feedback, because I have some questions for you.
Okay.
Thank
They
you.
may be able to answer as well. So I'm gonna open the public hearing at 4:17. As it stands, I have two people signed up to speak. I have Mr. Cox, Al Cox. Al, you wanna,
I use the podium.
you can use the podium, it's fine.
My name is Al Cox. My wife and I live at 2651 Bandera Highway for the last 24 years. The property is directly across the street or the highway from the main gate of the property being considered and adjacent to the 3 acres on the river. I thank this commission for allowing me to comment on this proposal and thank the developer for their comments. The city spent thousands of man-hours, staff, and community leaders to create a vision for the future of Kerrville. The final product was a 2050 comprehensive plan. It was to be the guideline for city growth and won a state award for its excellence. However, I asked this commission to consider how does this proposal fit into that plan, subtitled Your Voice, Your City. The plan addresses this area's strategic catalytic area number 10, which is allowable for rural living, estate, residence, professional, and ag outdoor. Rural living is defined as single-family home with 2 to 10 acres, and estate residential as 1.5 to 2 acres. These type of land uses indicate a much lower population density and a higher build quality than the current proposal. The plan addresses annexation, stating that local government should not undertake annexation without careful thought, since this obligates the city to extend utilities and services which may not exist or may be undersized. The plan also shows existing and anticipated utilities in the area and requires an additional sewer pump station just to accommodate Comanche Trace, and the existing water lines connecting Comanche Trace are contractually allocated for its completion. Therefore, any annexation of the proposed acreage would require a total rework of these systems. The plan also addresses growth, and I quote here, "Growth needs to be sustainable and the type growth that would benefit the people already there, not just the new residents." Following the previous proposal, I contacted the appraisal district and described the proposal as being similar to the development on 534 across from Tivy, which this looks very similar. I was told that such a development should it occur, would negatively impact my appraisal, and I ask that you protect my investment by weighing the impact on the existing people who are already here. And again, I quote the plan, staying true to the local aesthetics ensures that the new development will be compatible with the existing character of the community and strengthen Kerrville's unique sense of place. Let me see. In addition, the proposal shows the 3 acres next to the river as being R2. If R2 is granted, there is no guarantee that this plan would not change and be developed into multi-lots. So I would suggest that the proposal be amended to designate the acreage as ag outdoor tourism, which would also benefit the community as a whole in that those taxes would be at a lesser rate. I now ask, will the Kerrville be the city of the vision, or as described in the plan, or the city that developers created by their vision? Thank you.
Dr. Ross?
I live, right here. Right at the corner. Good luck with trying to build right there, like,
Dr. Ross, if you could step to the microphone, the meeting's recorded.
gotcha.
Thank you.
So I live right at that corner, and, I know the area pretty well, as Mike referenced earlier, there are significant drainage areas there, so good luck on building there. I guess I've got a couple questions, probably more for Drew, I think. So what's the difference between R1 and R2?
The R1 is single family only. R2 does allow single family townhomes and duplexes.
So it
Lot
does,
sizes as well, lot sizes on the
Correct.
R1 are bigger,
so
wider.
what's the smallest lot on an R1 and the largest lot on an R2?
For single family, the smallest lot in R1 is 5,000 square feet with a minimum width of 50 feet. Single family in R2 is 45-foot width, 4,500 square feet.
Okay.
Not a big difference, just a little difference.
And so they said 1,500 square feet to 2,500 square feet homes? I think I heard that.
Yes.
And I'm thinking 2,500 square feet on even a 5,000 square foot lot, that's, when you calculate in maybe a patio and a driveway and a lot of concrete, it's not a whole off, it's pretty high impervious. im-
as well,
Okay,
two levels more
okay.
square footage.
Okay. I understand you guys' position. I've enjoyed living out there. I've got a 2-acre lot. I've got neighbors the other side of the fence that they walk around on four legs, and I enjoy having those kind of neighbors. And I think those of us that live in this part of the world can appreciate that. My concerns are the things that have already been raised and spoken to: traffic, water, light, and noise are two of the things that come to mind. I understand y'all's position. I'm disappointed in this, but I understand how the real world works. And I share. I think Al's concern is if we hear they only want to do single family, but if we give them R2, what do we have other than their word that they're going to stick with single family and not decide to go multifamily? Because obviously that would be within that's something they could do if they wanted to.
Anyone else? I don't have anybody else signed up. Does anyone else wish to speak? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Regina Cox. I'm married to Albert Cox here, so you've already heard all of his brain thoughts, and he has a very good brain, I assure you. And I just want to say one thing that worries me, because several times a day, I take my dog into our front yard, and she does her running around. And I sit for fun, because it's boring to just watch a dog go pee, so it's kind of like I do something else. I count the traffic that goes by. We're out there approximately 10 minutes, probably 6 or 7 times a day. And I will say, that average that I get in that count is from 60 to 75 cars a day. It's a lot of cars. Even at night, at 11 o'clock at night, which is the last time we go out, there's probably 40 cars that go by our front yard. Our front yard is, 173, so have a really good, it's informal, I haven't logged it in every day. But my concern is that lot where that's still open, that's next door to us, is away to the river for an awful lot of deer and raccoons and foxes and the wild animals of the world. That's the only place really along there that they have a free walk down to get a drink. And my concern is, and there's enough dead animals out there now on the side of the road from just the traffic we have. If we increase the traffic by 500 homes worth of people who are going to be people that have at least 2 cars, probably 3 or 4 as their children get older, because now kids can't use dad's car. They all need their own car, or they're just not real kids. So I'm really concerned because there's curves in this area. It's going to be hard to put a safe light. I don't want to add to my list of how many cars go by, how many crash bang accidents I hear out there when they're trying to negotiate that curve. And if they put a light down there where the curve is, and these cars are coming not expecting cars to be ahead of them, they're going to come around a curve and hit a light. And if there's 10 cars stopped there, that's bad news for somebody. They're either going to have to go off the road or hit somebody. So my concern is really, other than 500 houses, bringing another at least,
1,200.
I'm sorry, 1,200? Oh, I thought it was 500. Oh my God. So I just feel bad for people with 4 legs who cannot get up and speak for themselves. And that is a deer trail. They go down there and drink water out of the river on that little thing. And I know they're saying they're going to do a park, but if they have zoning for not a park, it's other things like more houses or or duplexes or apartment buildings, then that's gone. They don't have it anymore. I think humans have done enough to the wildlife. Thank you.
Anyone else before I close the public hearing?
I do have a question for them.
Go ahead, Al, step up.
Is this gonna be like a homeowners association that sets rules and regulations as to what will be going on in that community, as the number of cars they can have on the street, what they can pile up in their backyard, or is it once they buy the house, it's their house, and, the neighbors have no say-so about what's going on?
Is there a planned HOA?
Yes, there will be an HOA with the covenants that go along with it, regarding design, how you can park your cars, how many cars you can have, garages, all those sorts of things that come with it.
Mandatory, you have to be a
Mandatory.
member of the HOA?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, I spoke to another member of her group, and he mentioned there would be an allotment off of 173 that would not be built on for expansion of 173. That does not show any kind of setback for that future increase in 173.
I think there's potential that there could be right-of-way dedication to TxDOT. We're just still waiting to go through that study, but then
This
with
is
that, for
conceptual
the
now.
widening of 173 in the future.
Like I said, I talked to Mr. Killen.
Kalam,
Kalam.
yes. He works with me, yes.
Anybody else? Yes, sir?
I thought of one more question for Drew. This is about 250 acres, 1,200 lots. Is that,
263, more or less, yeah.
how many acres is Comanche Trace and how many lots does Comanche Trace have?
Comanche Trace is 1,350 acres, of which part is the golf course. And I think it's planned for it's, at the end of the day, 700, 800 homes, John, something like that.
I think with the additional phase, it's closer to 12 or 1,300.
Well, I know that there's a development coming in the back. It's just one development, Civilly Homes, 300 homes, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so how many square feet now? Did you say
1,350 plus or minus acres is what Comanche Trace is, but
Minus
you,
200 for a golf
minus the
course.
golf course.
Minus the golf course.
And I will tell you,
And
Dr.
currently
Ross,
700-800 homes?
I think Drew seems to think it might, I think originally it was like supposed to be 800 or 900 homes, so it could be more.
Okay.
But I will tell you, one of your comments a while ago, we are in development in the back of Comanche Trace right now with 2,000 square foot homes, 2,200 square foot homes on, 5-foot setback lots, on small lots. So that is part of what's going on. That is just part, I think, the world we live in today. Yes, ma'am.
Add?
This is your show.
I don't know. Just to address a couple of the comments.
Sure.
So appreciate, Dr. Ross, the comments about drainage, and that's something that, we'll take into account when the drainage study is done. And obviously, we talked about the traffic study. But during the public comment, we were able to kind of chat a little bit. And I think if it's okay with Drew and Steve, I think we'd like to offer possibly some sort of an amendment to our request that can maybe satisfy some concerns. So, let me find, okay, it's kind of difficult to see on here, but, so this tract here is, a separate appraisal district account parcel. And what we could propose is to do this one at R1 and have the 50-foot wide lots minimum, and then keep this piece, the R2, that would be the 45-foot, and then take because I think the best we can do on the river frontage is the R1 to allow for the amenities, to change that piece to R1 also.
That's,
And also maybe some setbacks, so they're not so many right on the road.
that'll all come in the planning phase and the planning phase and everything else. But that's a pretty good,
Can we talk?
you can talk anytime you want, Johnny.
Since we're making a deal,
We appreciate that.
there's very little, as the doctor said, difference in the width of that lot. Why not just make it all R1? You're talking about 500 square feet
It reduces.
difference.
It reduces the density.
It's a reduction in density, which is impacts on affordability of the homes. And so, the people want.
Now, wait a minute, say that again? I built a few houses in my life, and I'm not sure I understand it.
Sure, so the bigger lots means less home can be developed, which means more expensive homes. So, and the demand seems to be to have the larger backyards. And so then if we take the lots and have the wider 50-foot and then try to keep the bigger backyards, it reduces the lot count, I think more significantly than you would think. And then it just means how the cost of the homes go up. So then the target market shifts, and that's, we're trying to keep these at, a price.
I submit that 5 feet of width in a lot is not going to affect how many you can do by some, granted, understood, but, there, right now we don't have TxDOT's survey. The city we haven't done the water. We don't know about the sewer and the water and TxDOT's traffic and, decel lanes and who knows what. All those things have to come after D.R. Horton applies for a permit of some sort. My problem here is I have to say, raise my right hand or left, whatever, and say, I agree that you're gonna do all those things and R2 is okay. I can't do that because that's too much density. And wish I could go chat again real quick. Maybe if we just make it R1 and take off that 3 acres, make it R1 like you said, so you can build a building down there, an amenity. Why can't we, can we get that far? You need to dial a friend or?
I mean, we can talk about it we felt like giving the R1 on that one piece, almost, pretty significant piece of the property was a pretty big
Almost
give
half.
already. So we'll chat about it, but, let me see.
Anybody else for it? Close the public hearing. Yeah, I'm
Just a
gonna-
quick calculation in my head, instead of 1,200 lots, if you went to R1, you'd be down to like 900 lots.
No, you'd be over 1,000.
Over 1,000?
Yeah.
Okay, my math's not too great today.
Well,
And so
it-
you're still talking at least 2,000 people minimum, and probably 2,000 cars. And you're still way over density for what's there now. And
let me close this-
that's what the comprehensive plan calls for.
Let's close the public hearing part of this, if no one else wants to speak, and then we can have a discussion, because I have a couple of observations myself that I don't know if anybody's thought about, but anyway, are we done? No one else wants to speak? All right, I'm gonna close the public hearing here at 4:36. Just question, I have a question before we go through our comments. I have a question, Drew, on the drainage side where the conceptual plan shows it 200 feet off the property line. The city will have to approve anything they put in there, knowing what the situation is with the water coming down.
Right.
Okay, so that, the city will deal with that, correct?
Correct.
Let's just go, Brom, you were a little late. Do you have any comments or anything about it?
I do not.
More, John?
When does the developer have to prove the availability of the water to flush toilets, et cetera? When does that happen?
So that'll be with the adequate facilities plan, which is required to come in before the preliminary plat. So they'll work with our engineering staff and third-party firm to do a study on what that looks like for their engineering.
Do you know how many thousand gallons per lot that they use when they calculate that?
I do not.
Can you guess? Is it a half acre foot or
I
something?
wouldn't even know where to begin.
Well, the city will, assuming that whatever happens here goes in some fashion, goes through, the city will not be issuing any, they may approve plats, but they won't be issuing any permits to build anything if there is not sufficient water and sewer and concurrency on the roads. Is that correct, Drew?
We wouldn't even get to final plat if there wasn't adequate
And
capacity.
that, I mean, we're kind of looking at property rights, and the city has to look at managing
That's correct.
the development, but
But John, you're asking, I'm gonna try and answer that question for him. You're asking about like a per house,
Right.
what that average is. Okay, I'll dig into it. I'll get you that.
Say it again?
I'll dig into it. It's gonna be somewhere around 5,000
Okay.
gallons per month. But you're talking about like an acre foot calculation request? Yeah, okay.
Okay, so 5,000 gallons
For an average residential home per month?
per month,
Yes, sir.
60,000 gallons. And if we take away, if they agree to an R1, which would change the total number of lots from 1,200 to 1,080. 120, I can't do that math. 60,000 times, Ross, can you do that math?
6 million.
That's a lot of water. Okay,
Yes, sir.
sorry.
David, any questions, any comments?
No, I think the little piece of property across the highway, R1, that sounds like a good deal. And, not at this stage of the game, I think that's,
David?
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of the same concerns and heartburn, I think that everybody up here probably did as we were getting into it. The Riverside property, I think R1 makes sense if that's what we're gonna plan. I don't wanna approve something and then 12 houses get built right there, you know what I mean? The R1 designation for the lower portion, I think makes sense. My question, I guess, for Drew is like, how, because we're just talking about annexation and zoning, we're not talking about plans, really.
Right.
And that comes in later, but like, how tight can we tighten down on this? Say, if we were to propose approving all of this as an R1 zoning, that accomplishes maybe what we wanna see on the Riverside and the property as a whole. Granted, it limits your building capacity by 10%, which there makes it more expensive. You have a different clientele. But could we technically do something like that with the anticipation that they're probably gonna come in and ask for a variance on that zoning? Is that possible at that point? To come in at a 45-foot setback
No.
for that one portion?
No, they
or-
would have to come back to the planning commission, because the variance would be based on a hardship of the property.
Right.
Which right now is a blank slate, so there really is no hardship.
Probably not
Um,
gonna get it, probably not gonna get a variance,
Yeah, the only,
once the zoning is done.
the only other option would be to come back as a planned development, and identify the specific parameters of their development that don't align with a specific R2 or R1 zoning.
Anything else, Tabor?
No, I think that gets it.
Did y'all talk amongst yourselves?
I understand,
Wait a minute. R2, the whole thing.
No, what she proposed, the R1 on the piece nearest Comanche Trace,
Right.
R2 in the center, and R1 on the river frontage.
I don't disagree with trying to make this R1, but it's not, it's probably not gonna happen because of the cost of the property and the cost of development. We all need to understand, and us at Comanche Trace need to understand, this property sits in the county, it's not controlled by the city. If it doesn't get annexed into the city, then the county has no zoning power whatsoever. The only thing the county can do is require quality of the roads. So Meek could sell the property to someone that could go in there and put anything they wanted in there, basically, within reason. They could put a manufactured home park. They could put, like they were gonna do back on the backside of River Hill, they could put a ton of apartments. They could do they could build, tract housing. They can do a lot of things that city doesn't have any control over. And then they can start drilling wells, I would assume. If it's not if the city doesn't control it, they'll do well in septic tanks. I'm not sure how that impacts property values, honestly. I tend to think, my personal opinion is, it's a lot of houses, I understand that. I think that the concession that they made was a pretty substantial concession, and I don't know what the difference in the number of lots is. I don't know if you take 40% of the property, you go from R2 to R1, how many houses you can't build there.
Not very many. Less.
It's not,
Still 1,100.
but, we just have to make a decision. We just have to say that, we're recommending annexation with R1 zoning, or we're recommending annexation with what they've requested, R1 and R2. And vote on it, and, if it doesn't, well, however it works out, they're gonna go to city council anyway, so. If there aren't any more comments, I'm ready for a motion to move on this. Unless Drew has any comments or additions,
The only thing I would add, if, based on their amended request for the R1 and the portion adjacent to Comanche Trace, that's parcel number 17441. And then the approximate 3 acres on the riverside is not a separate parcel, but that way the motion is clear which pieces we're talking about.
Okay. There's really nothing we can't, the biggest issue I have with this whole thing is that property, that 3 or 4 acres across the street, zoning at R1 allows them to go in and build probably 4 or 5 homes or something like that in there, Drew?
Well, I certainly can't speak for the developer, but the R1 would not allow the homes to front Highway 173.
Okay.
So they would actually have to build either a small cul-de-sac or a private driveway. So that's gonna take up quite a bit of space that they could build on too. So on 3 acres, that would be a pretty tough lift.
we have a request from them for annexation and R1 zoning in those two plots and R2 and the rest of it. I'm ready to hear a recommendation, a motion.
Well, Drew made a good point, I thought, call out, was that 17441?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's the one that's gonna be R1 rated,
R1, yes.
okay? And then the other R1 that we were volunteered, which piece
It's
is?
the 3 acres across the street on the riverside.
Yeah, it's not a separate tax parcel, but the approximate 3 acres on the riverside.
Okay, all right. Well, if we can cluster all those whatevers together, I would make a motion that we follow that, the 17441, as well as a small piece on the river, R1, the rest of it continues as R2.
Your motion is to recommend annexation in the R1 and R2 zoning.
Right.
We have a motion.
I'll second it.
We have a second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you very much.
We will move on to 4A.
So just a reminder, we have another, excuse me, another series of meetings for the comprehensive plan update on January 22nd. The Downtown Advisory Committee will be meeting at 1 o'clock. Y'all are welcome to attend if you'd like. The Planning and Zoning Commission will meet at 4 o'clock. And then the public meeting, similar to the one in October, will be at Arcadia Live Theater.
What's
at
the date on
6
that again,
o'clock.
Drew?
January 22nd.
January?
4 o'clock meeting here? or-
Yes, the 4 o'clock meeting will be here, and then the 6 o'clock meeting will be across the street at Arcadia. And y'all are welcome to attend any and all of those. Of course, please be here for the 4 o'clock. They're all open to the public, and obviously the 6 o'clock is geared for public engagement. Consultants will be presenting their proposed drafts of the small area plans for downtown and Nimitz Lake area, as well as some of the chapter updates that you guys provided your input on.
That
That's
it?
Other than that, the next regular meeting is February 6th. Oh, as of right now, we have no pending cases, so unless we get some plats in. Early Valentine's present for you.
All right, if we have no
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn. Have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, all in favor? We are adjourned.
We always
Thank y'all
agree
very
on
much.
that one.